This does not mean the end of Stadia.
Sit down!
This is the Android Police Podcast.
It's Friday, January 17th. Welcome. I'm Corbin Davenport alongside Cody Toombs. And there's been so much that's happened this week. The podcasts this week have just been loaded with lots of fun stuff. So if you're behind on your podcast, you should really listen to those because we talked about a lot of fun stuff this week. But we're ending the week off with even more fun stuff to talk about. This was not usually January post CES, we get into a little bit of a news lull. Not a lot happens. Not the case this week. One of the big things that came out was more news about Google Stadia. It's not shutting down. I swear to God, if I see a comment in that about the Twitch chat, I'm gonna start kicking people. So testing me right now, Jan Solo. Don't you dare. Anyway, so Google announced a couple of new things coming to Stadia. The big part was that Google says, I don't think we have it in our post. The big part was that Stadia announced 120 new games will be coming to Stadia this year, at least. And 10 of those are planned to be exclusives. So that is a huge jump from the catalog right now. I think there's like 30 or 40 games, maybe. I might be overselling that.
It's I think in the mid 30s, or it's at least over 30. One point of clarification, they actually say that they're tracking more than 120 games coming to Stadia in 2020. They don't actually say that it's only going to be that by the end of the year. This is just how many they're currently working on. This
is how many they can promise right now without backtracking.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, 120 is actually a pretty low number. If that were an end of the year goal, that would basically be 10 a month. And if you look at like major consoles, their release schedules for each month, typically it's like 10 is a low number. Like on their busy months, it can be upwards of 20 or even 30. So actually some crazy months it gets even higher than that. And considering Stadia brings in a lot of classic games in addition to new games, like 120 would be a really low target.
Yeah, and we don't know anything beyond that number. We don't know like what portion of this will be, huge games that have come out in the past couple years that Stadia would be playing catch up on, like most of the catalog right now. I don't think there's been a AAA release that came out on Stadia at the same time as other platforms yet. Because I think it's all been a couple months. So we don't know the contents. Maybe this will be a Nintendo eShop situation where like 95% of them are total garbage that no one will ever want to play. But maybe there'll be a lot of huge AAA games coming. We also don't know how many of those will be free for the Stadia Pro people or the Stadia Founders Edition members. So couple questions there for the future, but that's exciting. If you're into Stadia, there's a lot more coming for you. A couple of the other improvements Google highlighted is they're adding support for 4K gaming from a web browser. So right now, the only way you can play Stadia games in 4K is with a Chromecast Ultra. So they're expanding that. That's good. They're also looking into deeper Google Assistant functionality when playing on the web and support for more Android phones, because I think is it Pixel only right now?
I believe it's just the Pixels right now, but I would swear somebody said that you could already hack it through some means.
I'm sure it's like phones, but I'm sure there's some XDA forum where someone got it working on like a Nexus 5, but so more official phones, that'd be nice. And also they said they're working on wireless gameplay on the web through the Stadia controller, because I think right now you have to connect the Stadia controller over USB to work with Stadia, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So 3 of these things are basically announcements that they're improving the web experience. And considering, not everybody wants to get a Chromecast Ultra or play on their phone, it's a reasonable goal. These are things that certainly some people are going to get a lot of use out of. Notably, they are missing a lot of things that people know will be coming, like family sharing. This is something that was confirmed pretty early on that it's going to be there. They haven't announced really like just a litany of features, and there's no mention of things like sharing screenshots, game clips. There's no mention of trying to think of some of the other things that we're missing.
I mean,
Achievements.
I mean, they just added a website for the Stadia store. Like
Yeah.
I think last month, and before that, you could only look at new games through the apps. So, yeah, I think definitely for the next 6 months, maybe longer, Stadia is going to keep being this weird patchwork of features where things you expect maybe still aren't there, but there's still so much more to the package that at least some of it you can look the other way.
Yeah. So right now it's in that position where like I don't want to over criticize because they are adding stuff pretty quickly. But at the same time there's
Right.
so much left, and it would be really nice to see a roadmap for what order some of this stuff is going to happen, and maybe not like a deadline but kind of a when we think it's going to happen, because a lot of people probably hanging back on the basis of so many things being missing.
Yeah, and it's also telling. I don't think Google's announced any sort of ETA for the free Stadia plan, right? It's still just Founders Edition people.
Uh my understanding was that the free tier was supposed to start after the first 3 months of Stadia being active, which was basically the end of what Stadia Founders Edition and Pro buyers got,
Okay.
I believe. But I might be wrong on that. But I swear I remember it being like 3 months out. That's when free tier starts.
Okay. So yeah, that should be coming soon, probably.
Yeah, we'll
Um,
see. It's one way or another. I know it was like an early 2020 thing. But yeah, anyway, other people who are also actually going to be getting Stadia are, let's see, a ISP over in the UK called BT. We of course don't live over there, so our familiarity with it is a little on the thin side. But they're going to be receiving Stadia Premier Edition packs as part of a fiber subscription. So basically, if you're subscribing to their fiber and getting, pretty good rates, you're also going to get to play some Stadia.
yeah, and this is also kind of funny because Stadia is almost like an ISP's worst nightmare because it's the most traffic a reasonable person would probably put on their network unless they're running like some kind of crazy server from home. So it's interesting to see an ISP actually embrace Stadia and have it as a selling point, sort of saying like, look, our internet is so good, we're giving you Stadia so you can like stress test it for us.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't see Comcast doing that anytime soon. I'm sure Comcast will instead make like a gaming add-on for their home internet that will cost $20 more and will unblock Stadia.
So, yeah, I think this is an interesting approach because it is bad, or it's a hard thing for the ISP to maintain, obviously, but at the same time, it's a pretty good advertisement for their own service if they're saying, yeah, we're really not worried about it. We'll hook up everybody with Stadia so that they can really push this thing.
Yep. Yeah. So good job,
And
UK.
notably, for those who care about this sort of thing, this model is going to come with a white controller. I don't know how important that is, but some hardcore fans they actually care about this. So yeah,
There you go.
white.
Yes, it will probably get yellowed over time, like all white plastics.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. So something that's sort of just tangentially related to Stadia, but also applies to Android, is a new release of the Vulcan graphics API. So this is the graphics stack that is used by a lot of games, especially on Android, a little bit on Windows. Google also said a while back that all Stadia games use Vulcan because it's this lower level API that allows generally for low level hardware access, so games can run closer to the metal, so to speak. But Vulcan 1.2 came out earlier this week, and a lot of the changes are extremely technical to the point where I'm not really qualified to talk about them. I've never written a game or messed with game engines, but there are a few things that actually would benefit something like Stadia quite heavily. Like one of the improvements is better support for HLSL, which is I believe
it stands for high level shader language, I believe.
Right, and it's the open source implementation of that from Microsoft's DirectX. So presumably games ported from DirectX to work on Stadia, which would probably be most Stadia games, possibly, would maybe see better performance from that. So there's a couple things like that that could help Stadia. Actually, the group that creates the Vulcan standard actually included a quote from someone on the Stadia team in their press release, and the Stadia team was very excited about it. So, not really sure when those kinds of improvements would come to Stadia, if they'd really be noticeable at all, because not only does the underlying platform have to be updated to support Vulcan, but also the games running on top of it. So this usually takes a long while. And also, we don't know when this API will show up in Android. I would assume Android 11, maybe. But I know also, I think Qualcomm is supposed to start delivering graphics drivers updates through the Play Store. So maybe it'll come to some Android 10 devices too. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm sure this is going to be kind of like how OpenGL versions rolled out for a while, where the announcement happens, then devices start getting it maybe 6 months to a year later, and then you don't really see anything that's actually really leveraging it until maybe another 2 years out. Hopefully this will be a little faster, and obviously for Stadia, this is going to be a much bigger deal. For Android devices, I think it'll be interesting, it'll be helpful certainly, but yeah, we're probably not going to see any immediate changes out of this. We're going to see stuff just happening down the road. Plus, we're going to see device exclusives. So, some device comes out with this, and then they partner up with a game company and say, hey, can you release this on our phone? And they're like, yeah, we'll totally do that. That's about it.
Yeah. So new APIs, not terribly exciting for the average person. But it's still neat to see this technology progressing, and Vulcan in general is still pretty underutilized. I think a lot of major games coming out, especially on Windows, still use DirectX because it's just been the standard for 20 years or whatever. So, this is something that's very gradual, slow moving, but it's nice to see these changes. And of course, Vulcan is completely open standard and everything. So there's a lot of companies and groups contributing to it to make it better, including Google, I would assume.
Well, so what it largely depends on is the game engines people are using. So obviously, if somebody is pulling out Unreal Engine, if Unreal Engine is currently focused on DirectX, it runs on DirectX. When they've got Vulcan support in there to replace it, or as an alternate option, whatever the case may be, that's when the switchover happens for most games.
Yeah, and if we've learned anything from Bethesda, it's that companies love to use their engine for as long as humanly possible without changing it very much.
Oh wow. Oh, it almost brought a tear to my eye on that one.
I really wanted to like Fallout 76. I really did. I actually had
Oh,
I had that conversation in real life. I was getting like a drink from Starbucks, and I happened to be wearing like my Vault Boy shirt that I got at some point, and someone asked me, "Oh, did you play Fallout 76?" And I was like, "Yeah, it was real bad," and they agreed, and we had like this shared moment of distaste for this game I had with this complete stranger. That's how terrible the experience was.
I haven't played it, but I've yet to hear anyone say positive things.
It's not good. It's not.
But fortunately, people do say positive things about the Android Police podcast, which
That's
happens
true.
to be live on Twitch 4 times a week. But we honestly can't do that without your support, and we would appreciate it if you could throw us a little bit of love in the form of subscriptions. You can do that with the Android Police channel on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Android Police. As a subscriber, you gain access to the Ryan emoji, where he is slightly inebriated and showing copious amounts of joy.
Oh, he's
You,
more than slightly inebriated.
yeah. And you will also gain extra entries into Android Police giveaways. We know we have one coming up soon. Subscriptions start at $5 a month, and or you can also subscribe using Twitch Prime. Or man, I'm reading this super out of order, and it's boggling my brain.
Okay.
So Jules will cut that.
Yeah.
As I say, subscriptions start at $5 a month, or if you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, you will also have a free subscription that you can give to us at no cost. Just drop by and subscribe each month. You do have to do that manually, unfortunately.
Yes.
Jules says he cuts nothing. I disbelieve. Roll to disbelieve.
Jules is trying his hardest to make us look like complete buffoons.
I mean, he doesn't have to try that hard.
No, he doesn't.
But if you would like to help out and support, we also, of course, always appreciate donation in the form of bits, or drop by the Android Police page and look for the donate button. And as far as subscriptions go on Twitch, just drop by twitch.tv/Android Police, look for that subscribe button, and help us out. And with that, let's talk a little bit about gaming. Oh, wait. We just were.
We were just here.
But let's do it some more.
This is not cloud-based gaming. So all you people that tuned out when you heard Stadia, you can come back in now. We're done with Stadia.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
For a moment.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. No, anyway, if you prefer cloud-based computers, but not cloud-based gaming, you may have found yourself using Chrome OS. And gaming on Chrome OS hasn't really been a super big thing, but that's something apparently Google and Valve intend to change. So those of you out there who know anything about gaming probably know Steam. It is basically the ultimate in game delivery in the form of kind of a package manager. It makes it easy to buy and download games, install them without too much of a hassle, and play, gain achievements, the whole 9 yards. Well, as it turns out, Google has kind of let slip that they're working with Valve to bring Steam to Stadia semi-natively. What they're basically going to do is set it up
to Stadia. It's coming to Chrome OS.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right. I said wrong thing.
I said we're moving on from Stadia.
Oh, come on. Like they're not going to try to stick it on Stadia at some point too. But anyway, yeah, Chrome OS, it's a thing.
Yeah, so this is kind of weird. So the idea behind this is that Google would run Steam on top of the Linux container on Chrome OS, which you can install Steam right now. I did do it, but the problem is that right now the Linux container has no support for graphics acceleration, so they have to finish that first before any games become playable. But yeah, I mean this go ahead.
So go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say this is so bizarre because everything Google has done up to this point has been saying the Linux container is only for developers. Like they've made that very clear. They, like when you set up the Linux container, it doesn't set up like a Linux app store. You get a terminal and that's it. This is not meant to be like super user friendly, but now I guess they'll utilize it and turn it into something that's kind of user friendly, I guess. I don't know. But it is a very strange move. And again, this is still like presumably in their early stages. This might not even happen. It's just something that Google's working towards right now. At the very least, Steam compatibility would be a good benchmark for their Linux container to see what it's truly capable of. But this is also exciting because Steam for Linux last year, I believe, added a new feature called Proton, which is Valve's customized version of the Wine compatibility layer that actually translates DirectX calls into Vulcan to work well under Linux. So the end result is that you can download Steam for Linux, or in this case, it would be Steam on Chrome OS, and just hit a button, and it will download your Windows games as if they were native and run them in this compatibility layer, really without you noticing. It's kind of like on back in the day when Apple switched Macs to Intel processors, and they built this whole subsystem for running PowerPC apps on Intel, and you just didn't notice it was running. That's kind of what this is like. I've tried it with a few Windows games. It's pretty cool, and they've actually added official support for a lot of games, so you don't even have to enable this in some cases. Like you just go to download it and it says, "Oh, we'll run this in the layer for you," and set everything up. So if this does come out, then it should have a pretty good game library.
Yeah. So it's definitely a good move. And seeing as Google even acknowledged one of the biggest downloads on Chrome OS devices from in the form of Android apps was almost always games. So it makes a lot of sense that they're trying to bring a little bit more of a native experience and obviously a bigger repertoire of games. But that breaks in a new issue: performance. Man, I fully believe that this is a good thing in the sense that you'll be able to open up your Steam library. And I don't know about you, I don't know about most people, but man, my Steam library is like 80-90% old games that honestly could play on like a 10-year-old computer perfectly smoothly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, for the longest time, I didn't have a PC with dedicated graphics. So I just had, I kept buying all the old games I knew would run on like my Mac Mini. So, yeah.
Well, and most of my library admittedly does come from Humble Bundle purchases that like, 20 games, like, I don't know, 5-10 of them are the earliest part of some franchise, and they're so old, it's not even a thought. A lot of that stuff, I'm sure is going to play actually really well on a Chromebook, even with minimal or no real graphics acceleration, but I don't think it's going to be very good for anything new. And part of that is Chromebooks just don't have the hardware yet. Very, very few of them actually have anything resembling a good GPU. Most of them are pretty low in storage, relatively low in RAM.
Yeah, RAM is probably the biggest issue. Storage, I've noticed most new Chromebooks now come with like 64 gigs at least, that you could put a couple indie games on that. But yeah, it will come down to what the overhead is like with both Chrome and the Linux environment and Steam all running at once. I know the Linux environment, like it's not like a full virtual machine, so it doesn't have like a huge performance overhead. It's pretty lean, but there's still compatibility layers and sandboxes going on, not including whatever else you might be running at the same time on your Chromebook if you've got a tab open or like an Android app in the background. Maybe this will even be something that they whitelist to only devices with like a moderately powerful processor inside.
Oh man, I hadn't even considered that, and I'm already picturing kind of the same bad experience that happened with running Android apps initially and then Linux containers later. Chromebooks that where they're whitelisting, that's just such a rough experience for anyone who came or for anyone who bought before that whitelist started happening.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about this is that I assume there wouldn't be some kind of low level change required to Chrome OS, because the reason why Android, and I know you know this, but I'm just saying it just for the people listening, but like the reason why Android apps are only on certain Chromebooks and the reason why Linux support is only on certain Chromebooks is because they need a certain kernel version in the Linux kernel in Chrome OS, and the kernel version in Chrome OS doesn't change. Like you get a Chromebook, it has Linux kernel 4 dot something, and that's it. It doesn't ever change. You can update Chrome OS 100 times. They keep the same kernel version. But this is just using the Linux container stuff that's already in place. So I don't think there will be any weird technical limitations, but I could see Google maybe like giving you like a warning if you try to set up Steam that says, "Hey, you've got an Intel Atom CPU, buddy. I don't know what you think you're gonna run, but it's not the game you want to play."
Yeah, unfortunately, this will not play Crysis.
No, well,
actually, but at this stage, it might. But
maybe Crysis 1, maybe. You never know. I do remember actually the first Chromebook I got was like the original Dell Chromebook 13. And this was back in the day when you could, I think you can kind of still do this, but it's more difficult. When you could run a Linux CH root on top of Chrome OS. This was before the Linux layer thing. It was literally just like a copy of Linux running on top. And I do remember playing Minecraft and Team Fortress 2 in that CH root. And it did work kind of. So, that was like 5 or 6 years ago. So Chromebooks today could probably do that even with the overhead of the different Linux sandbox.
So, in your impression, do you think that this is one of those things that's going to take away a point of friction for Chrome OS?
Maybe. I don't know. There's again, I'm kind of interested to see what the final implementation of this, because again, the Linux container thing was not built with non-developers in mind. So I don't know if they're changing that, or if there's going to be some kind of special installer for Steam that's easier to use. I don't know. I don't. It's just very weird, because again, like, I don't. It's hard to describe. Chrome OS is kind of branching out in like 10 different directions, and very few of them make sense. Like again, the sheer fact that they've spent all this time and energy building a Linux container still baffles me, because again, developers usually want a machine where they can run stuff on the base hardware. But if you're a developer and you do your work on Chrome OS, that's awesome. But yeah, it's just weird. I didn't see Chrome OS going in this direction like 2 years ago. I think it'll probably help sell some Chromebooks, because I know, like, I was letting my sister use a Chromebook I have, because the laptop she was using died, and one of the first things she asked me was like, "Can I download Roblox?" And the answer was no. And then it was, "Can I download Minecraft?" And the answer was, "Well, there's the Android version in the Play Store." But also the sort of like meta layer to this is that Steam is no longer this total comprehensive hub for PC gaming that it was like 3 years ago. Now there's increased competition from especially the Epic Store, which doesn't support Linux whatsoever. So, there's a lot of games now that Steam is missing that would, they wouldn't be able to play essentially through this, or at least not easily. I don't know. Steam does technically let you launch games that aren't from Steam, but I don't know how that would work in this container. So, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. In the overall scheme of it, I'm not sure that this really removes enough of a roadblock for people who are saying that Chrome OS wasn't suitable for them for whatever reason. I mean, we've talked about this many times, that you can't really do video editing. You can't really even do very good image editing. I mean, it's it's workable, but it's not good enough for like decent photographers, or especially anybody who does professional graphics work. But I'm wondering, and obviously we'll have to wait and see how it actually pans out, but I'm wondering if this will really be enough to tell people who play games, not necessarily the latest games, obviously, but any decent gamer, will they look at this and say, okay, you know what? Maybe now I can actually use Chrome OS. And this feels like another bandage that doesn't really solve that problem, but it gives them that little bit of hope. I don't know. Just something I've been chewing on ever since I've read about this.
Yeah. Again, this just goes back to like, this is just a very weird announcement. Like, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm looking forward to trying this whenever it lands, mostly so I can, get some articles out of it, like a top 10 game list for your Chromebook. Because again, you're probably not running Crisis, so you need to know which games to run. But yeah, again, this is, I look forward to seeing if this comes out and what form it takes, and generally how does it work, because again, the graphics acceleration for Chrome OS still isn't done, and so it's not totally clear what the end performance will be like. I know you can like kind of test it on some models, but it's not done yet, so there's a lot of unknowns here.
Yeah. And man, also just how long is it going to take before this really comes to fruition? Because
if it does at all, I mean, this might just...
Oh yeah, that is also very notable, is while nothing was really said to this point, but you never know when projects like this just sort of fizzle and vanish. Everyone loses interest.
I mean, how many times has Google said they're working with Android app developers to make their apps work good on Chromebooks?
Wasn't there a time they were talking a lot with Adobe? And
well, look, we got Acrobat Reader, so there's your Adobe app.
Oh my god.
I mean, okay, in fairness, Lightroom for Chrome OS is pretty sweet, but that's about the only example of like a super high profile app coming to Chrome OS that I can think of.
Yeah.
Or at least like professional suite, not like, oh, now Evernote works slightly better on a keyboard or something.
Yeah, certainly. But anyway, do you have any more thoughts on this?
Not that I can formulate with words. Again, this is just so weird. Like, this is completely out of left field. This is the same reaction I had when Linux app support was first announced. Like, I was like, what? I thought this was supposed to be like the minimalist cloud-based OS, and now I have to download Linux packages on this Chromebook with 32 gigs of storage.
And for those listening at home without video, Corbin just made a series of emojis with his face. And none of them were a big smiley.
They're the ones you have to scroll like 3 or 4 pages through for like the exact right confused emotion.
Yep. Yeah. Confused, a little bit of digital vomit, the one with the thermometer sticking out. Yeah, those were roughly comparable. But yeah, no, I agree. It's one of those things. It's a good announcement, but at the same time, it just leaves you with so much trepidation, so much confusion, a little bit of curiosity, and just a general WTF.
Yeah, I'm not hating on it. I know we sometimes get comments that like we're too critical of things, or we make fun of everything. Like, I legitimately think this is cool. Like, this is running PC games on a like low level virtualization tech on top of a netbook. So this is pretty wild. But again, it's still that doesn't change the fact it's very strange.
Actually, a thought comes to mind, and it fits so well also with the Stadia story from earlier. Our issue is rarely that we are unhappy about this stuff. It's that Google often gives us so much of an impression of what course they're going to take with something, and then a little while later, an announcement comes out that seems to kind of contradict that course. And this is one of those things, like you said, this was something that was positioned for developers. And now it seems to be not just a not developer feature, but it's like a specific user focused feature. And then the same with Stadia. Like I've had the impression for a while that that playing through a Chrome tab was not really supposed to be a top priority for them, and some of the main features of Stadia were going to be top priorities. Those main features haven't been discussed at all in the last couple of months, but now here we are hearing, no, we're about to make this a whole lot better if you play through Chrome tabs.
Yeah,
you know, things like that. We expect one thing and then we get the rope-a-dope.
Yeah, and I will say, as someone who generally encourages the use of Linux, I would be interested to see if Google does expand the use of the Linux container beyond just Steam. Like if this is part of a push to make Linux sort of on the same level as Android apps. Like here's another app store where you can download things from, you know. Like am I gonna, you know, set up a new Chromebook in 2 years and it'll give me a link to download like a Linux video editor? That would be interesting. Again, I don't know if they're going that direction, but maybe, you know, it's hard to tell.
Yeah, who knows? Chrome OS may grow up to be a real operating system someday. And with that, we should probably run before we get too much hate mail. Yeah. So, all the topics we've talked about today can be found at androidpolice.com/podcast. We're live 4 times a week at twitch.tv/androidpolice, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email us at podcast@androidpolice.com. You can also find us on Twitter. Corbin can be found at Corbin Davenport. I'm available at Cody_Toombs, and our producer Jules Wang is at Point Jules. And you can find our theme music is by Home. We're back for another week of podcasts on Monday, and until then, take care and enjoy your weekend.